The mistake, the alien ship Virellus floated silently in deep space as stars shimmered beyond its curved windows. Inside the control room, Commander Relin stood beside the central console. His green skin had turned a shade paler ever since the scan alert had blinked red. The ship's system had picked up something unexpected. Not a weapon, not an intruder, but something worse. A living human child. He rushed toward the lower cargo bay, where the signal had come from. The corridors of Virellus were quiet, but heavy with tension as his boots echoed on the metal floor. 2 guards followed behind him without question. As the doors slid open to Cargo Unit 9, a faint breathing sound came from behind one of the storage crates. Commander Relin stepped closer. The moment he turned the corner and looked down, his eyes widened. A child sat there, small, curled up, awake, human, eyes full of fear but without tears, maybe 6 years old, no injuries, wearing Earth-made clothes, eating crumbs from a ration. Pack, a human child, on a warship. Miles from Earth, a junior officer named Tren appeared behind him holding a data tablet. His face looked too calm for what he had just caused. Relin turned sharply and shouted in a voice full of rage and disbelief, "You fool, you kidnapped a human child. Kidnapping a human child means..." Tren blinked, as if he didn't understand. Then he gave a half shrug and said he only wanted to bring back a specimen for study. Just one child, a small one. No weapons. No threat. Relin couldn't believe what he was hearing. Specimen, small, no threat. He grabbed Tren by the collar and pulled him forward. "You don't understand what you've done," he said. "Do you know what happens when you take a child from Earth?" Tren didn't reply. He didn't need to. He had already done what could not be undone. Relin ordered the guards to seal the cargo bay. The child had to be protected now, not studied, not handled, not harmed. Because if humans found out their child was missing, and on an alien ship, the entire galaxy would burn. Not in a week, not in a day, but soon. Very soon. He had heard the stories. Everyone had. Not myths, not rumors. Truth, cold truth. Planets that vanished from maps. Empires that fell in a day. All because someone touched what Earth called its own. Especially a child. The last time someone tried something like this, 100 human warships crossed 2 systems in silence. No talks. No warnings. No survivors. Relin walked back to the control room. His hands were shaking. His voice was low but urgent as he spoke to the communication team. "Prepare a message to Earth," he said. "Anonymous, unmarked. Tell them where the child is. Tell them we want peace. Tell them we did not mean harm, but it was already too late." In orbit around Earth, a deep space sensor clicked to life. One of Earth's oldest but strongest defense systems. It had picked up the signal of the child's DN at the moment Virellus passed near a satellite gate. Earth knew. Earth always knew. The signal had triggered Protocol 0 on the other side of the galaxy, in a bunker under the oceans of Earth. Captain Mira received the alert. Her fingers tapped the code in seconds. She stood calm as the team around her gasped at the information. A human child had been taken. Location found. Identity confirmed. Luca, 6 years old, missing for only 6 hours. Already off-world. No ransom. No message. That meant one thing. This was not a negotiation. This was a rescue. She gave the order without delay. The retrieval cruiser Iron Wind would launch in under 2 hours. No diplomacy. No debate. The child must be brought home. At any cost. Back on Virellus, Relin paced the halls of the medical bay. He stared at the sleeping child inside the containment dome. Not locked in, not hurt. Just resting, safe. For now he wondered if Earth would show mercy. Maybe they would understand it was a mistake. Maybe the ship could leave the child at a nearby station and flee. Maybe Earth wouldn't find them. But Relin knew better. Earth did not forgive when it came to their young. Their children were not soldiers, not pawns. They were sacred. The guards outside the door looked tense. No one said anything. Even Tren sat alone in his chamber, now silent and pale. Maybe now. He understood. Maybe not. Hours passed on the scanner. Varellus picked up a shadow. Then a signal. A silent one. A ship had entered their space. No ID, no markings. But they knew what it was. Iron Wind had arrived. A message came through, but it was not a request, not a demand, just coordinates. A name. A time. Give back Luca before the next sunrise or face retaliation, Commander. Relin stared at the words. Short. Final. Not a warning. A promise. He looked once more at the child still sleeping peacefully, unaware of the storm he had brought. And Relin whispered to himself, this is how wars begin, and Earth had just arrived to end it. The human response. Iron Wind moved through space like a silent storm, with its black steel frame cutting across the stars. No music, no cheers, no noise filled the ship, only the heavy breath of warriors, preparing for a mission that allowed no mistakes. Inside the command chamber, Captain Mira stood still as a statue, her eyes locked on the display screen showing the alien ship's location. Luca was only 6 years old, a civilian, a child with no knowledge of war. No training, no reason to be taken. The moment his signal was confirmed, humanity stopped talking and started moving. Earth's governments did not argue or delay. They did not send messages of peace or ask questions. They activated Protocol Zero and called for Captain Mirashi. Was known not for rage but for precision, not for shouting but for results. She had lead rescue missions across 5 sectors, brought back survivors from ruined colonies, and taken down pirate stations with only half a squad. But this was different. This was a child. Mira walked into the hangar where her team stood waiting, armored, silent, focused. Sergeant Cole stepped forward, his face calm but his voice full of fire. He asked only one question, is the child alive? Mira nodded and gave the full brief in short sentences. Alien ship identified as Varellus, child located in lower cargo. No damage detected, no communication accepted, no permission given. We retrieve him and return. No fire unless fired upon. But if they resist, we strike without mercy. Cole and the others gave a single nod. No cheers, no slogans, only action in a distant room. Luca sat on a padded bench inside a small chamber filled with soft lights and clean air. He did not cry, he did not scream, but he looked around as if trying to understand the strange walls and blinking screens. He whispered to himself little things like his mother's name, his pet's name, and the song he liked at bedtime. Commander. Relin entered quietly, holding a food tray with warm cubes of nutrition. Luca looked at him with wide eyes but did not move. Relin placed the tray down and sat on the floor, far enough not to scare him, but close enough to speak. He said, I am sorry, I did not know you would be here. I did not want this. Luca blinked slowly and asked, when can I go home? Relin had no answer. Elsewhere on the alien world, High Elder Tharn listened to the council with a bored face. Many members warned of the human response, many urged for immediate surrender. Tharn waved them off, saying humans were too emotional. They would not start a war over one child. He believed they feared losing face more than losing one of their own. He was wrong. Above the atmosphere, Iron Wind began final approach in the strategy room. Mira studied the map of the enemy's defense grid. She had already memorized the weaknesses, the blind spots, the paths with least resistance. The mission was clear, but her mind returned to one image over and over. Luca sitting alone in a metal room, eyes wide, voice quiet, heart unsure. Sergeant Cole came in and handed her a small toy, a soft plush animal with one ear torn. Mira asked, where did you get this? Cole replied his daughter had one just like it before she was lost in a transport breach. He said maybe it will help Luca feel safe when we find him. Myra took it and placed it in her armor pouch down. On Varellus, the alien guards whispered to each other, wondering if the humans would attack or wait or negotiate. Rumors moved faster than orders, and many already feared the answer. One crewman recalled a time his cousin saw a human ship tear through a pirate fleet in under 6 minutes. Another said he saw a station empty within hours, once Earth decided someone needed saving back. In Luca's chamber, Relin watched the child sleep again, small body wrapped in a blanket from his own quarters. He wanted to believe this could end peacefully, that the humans would take the boy and leave, that they would not destroy everything. Then the signal came. Iron Wind had sent a direct message with no encryption, no signature, no decoration. "We are here. We are coming. Return the child." Norellin closed his eyes and stood up. He tapped his wristband and gave a quiet command: "Open the secure channel." He wanted to speak to the human leader, not as an enemy, not as a soldier, but as someone who understood the value of life. In Iron Wind's command room, the screen flashed with Relin's image. Mira looked at him with no emotion, but allowed the call. He said, "I wish to give back the child. I did not approve of his capture. I want peace." Mira replied, "Bring him to the coordinates." Given no delay, no tricks, no escort, Relin agreed and ended the call. Sergeant Cole looked at Mira and asked, "Do you believe him?" She answered, "I believe he wants to live back on Varellus." Relin picked up Luca gently and wrapped him in a warm cloth. The boy woke and looked up at him with sleepy eyes. Relin said, "We are going to meet your people. They are coming for you." Luca nodded and leaned against his shoulder as if he already knew. The transport shuttle launched from Varellus at slow speed, heading toward the empty zone where Iron Wind had dropped coordinates. The stars looked calm, but the silence was heavy. Inside the shuttle, Luca sat beside Relin with the plush toy in his hands, the one Mira had prepared, now waiting in the extraction bay. The shuttle approached and the Iron Wind opened its lower gate. Mira stepped forward and saw the child through the glass, her face still calm but her heart moving fast. When the door opened, Luca ran forward. Mira caught him in her arms and held him close. She did not speak, but her grip said everything. Relin stood still watching the reunion, then turned without a word and walked back to his shuttle. He did not look back, and as the gate closed behind them, Mira whispered to the child, "You are safe now." But she knew this was not the end, because Earth had come for one child, and the galaxy had just witnessed the cost. The first strike, the return of Luca to Iron Wind, was not the end, it was the beginning. Captain Mira watched the stars move past the window as she held a silent report in her hand. It was from Earth Command, not a message of thanks, not an order to return, but a list of defense, NETWORKS intelligence files and target coordinates. Earth had no plans to let this incident fade quietly. The child had been rescued, but the violation had already been written into history. Mira looked at Sergeant Cole, who stood at attention near the strategy table. His injuries from the last mission were healing, but his eyes burned brighter than before. He asked if the next step would be retaliation. Mira did not answer directly. She showed him the message instead. At the top in bold letters were the words "Response Level Crimson." That meant immediate demonstration of power. Not a war, not a full invasion, but a reminder Iron Wind changed direction with perfect precision. No fanfare, no announcement. They were headed straight to the nearest outpost belonging to the same alien species who had taken Luca. It was a military relay station, light on weapons, heavy on communications and symbols. Earth wanted that station offline before the aliens could spread confusion or spin a lie. The mission was not about destruction. It was about control inside the alien capital. High Elder Tharn still refused to admit the danger. Even after seeing Iron Wind arrive, even after the child was taken back without resistance, he told the Council this was just human drama. He believed humans could not afford war. He believed Earth would move on. He was wrong again. At the edge of his world came a ripple. Iron Wind dropped out of faster-than-light drive. The station guards looked up at the sky and saw a shape unlike anything they had faced before. No lights, no music, no banners. Just black metal moving like a ghost. One guard called it into Central Command. His voice shook as he tried to describe the ship's size and speed. Before the message could even reach the Council, a beam of light cut across the sky. It did not destroy the station. It disabled every satellite above it. Silent, clean. Fast Iron Wind deployed its first squad. Mira led the team in person, armored in black and silver, with only one goal to complete. Reach the command tower, shut down all transmissions, extract data files, return. Sergeant Cole walked beside her holding a weapon designed not to kill, but to stop. Earth was not trying to wipe out the species. They were showing restraint, which made the message louder. When the team landed, the outpost alarms began to scream, but no help came. Nearby stations remained silent. No one dared to move. No one dared to challenge. Mira walked through the halls like a shadow. Doors opened with silent hacks. Guards were stunned, not harmed. Machines powered down with one touch. The command tower fell within 10 minutes. Outside in orbit, Iron Wind displayed a visual signal across all channels. It showed Luca's face. Then it showed the alien ship. Then it showed Earth's flag. Then silence. The message was clear. We saw, we came, we returned. Do not test us again. On the alien homeworld, panic spread faster than reason. Leaders whispered of past conflicts. Old records from before Earth joined the galactic table. Myths of how humans dealt with threats. Some said Earth was still primitive. Others said humans had grown patient, not weak. Tharn ordered all records of the child incident destroyed. He believed if the past was erased, the future would follow. He underestimated the weight of what had already happened. Virellus had already sent fragments of data across sectors. Soldiers had already spoken. Other species had already started. Watching, Commander Relin remained in exile, walking the quiet cliffs of a moon forgotten by maps. He had heard of Iron Wind's strike. He knew it could have been worse. He knew Mira had chosen precision over blood. He respected her choice. He also feared what might come next. Back on Earth, Luca was home again, in a quiet town surrounded by green trees and safe walls. Reporters were not allowed near. Cameras were blocked. The government had locked down every detail. Not to hide the truth, but to protect the child. Luca did not speak much, but he held onto the plush toy every night, and sometimes whispered, "Thank you." Into the dark, Captain Mira watched the footage from her private room aboard Iron Wind. The boy's face appeared on screen, small eyes full of life. It made everything worth it. She turned off the screen and looked at her crew gathered for debrief. She reminded them of the cost of failure, the value of life, the strength of unity. She said the galaxy would not forget this mission. Not because of violence, not because of fear, but because of what it meant. A single child taken, a planet moved, a fleet launched, a lesson taught. Sergeant Cole stood beside her as the room fell silent. He looked around and spoke from the heart. He said this was not just about Luca, this was about all of us. About showing the galaxy that humanity protects its own, no matter the distance, no matter the cost. Iron Wind began new patrols moving through sectors where trust was thin. They did not seek war, but they did not run from it. Every time they appeared on scanners, alien captains chose to turn away instead of engage. Fear had spread, but so had respect, and in distant corners of space, whispers began to rise. Do not touch the humans. Do not take what is theirs. Do not cross the line, because when one child vanished, Earth did not wait. Earth did not beg. Earth came with silence and strength, and in silence they left a message in the stars: never again. The rescue smoke drifted across the sky of the alien capital as small fires burned quietly across the outskirts. No large battle had taken place yet. The fear had taken root deeper than any wound. The humans had shown their hand, and it was not one of peace. It was not one of destruction either. It was something far more dangerous. Control inside a large war chamber. High Elder Tharn walked back and forth as reports arrived from broken stations and silenced satellites. Many of his own council now refused to meet his eyes. They had trusted his judgment, and now they watched entire fleets freeze in orbit, unsure of their orders. Ships were still armed but unmoving. Soldiers were trained but hesitating. No one wanted to be the next to trigger the wrath of Earth. Tharn blamed Relin for everything. He called him weak, careless, and foolish. He said the officer should have faced execution instead of exile. But deep down Tharn knew the truth. It was not Relin who had crossed the line. It was the belief that humans were soft. That belief had broken their security more than any weapon far from the council walls. Commander Relin walked alone through a valley of stone. His communicator had been silent for days. He had left Virelis knowing his return was forbidden. But he could not watch from the side. He had taken a shuttle and set course for the human ship, hoping to speak again, not as a soldier, not as an enemy, but as someone who had seen what others refused to see. Iron Wind received the signal hours later. Captain Mira watched the transmission in silence. Relin spoke clearly, saying he had no loyalty left for the council, that he wanted no reward, that he wished only to help end the mistake. He once stood near Mira, brought the message to Earth Command. The reply was short: trust is earned, not given. Proceed with caution. Inside the human ship, Sergeant Cole loaded equipment into the drop vessel. Mira stepped beside him and told him the plan. They would return to the alien world not to fight, but to remove the last traces of the incident. One facility remained hidden below the surface. A data vault that stored records of every interaction, every mistake, and every lie. If humans wanted to close the chapter, they had to erase it from the root. Cole nodded and prepared his squad. Mira chose to go with them. This mission was not only military. It was personal. The vault sat beneath a quiet desert, where no guards walked the sand and no towers stood watch. The alien government had abandoned it, hoping no one would find it. But humans were not guessing. Relin had provided every coordinate, every access code, and every detail. He knew what had been hidden, and he wanted to see it buried. The drop vessel touched down in silence. Cole led the way with Mira close behind. The doors slid open to reveal a narrow tunnel leading into the rock. The light flickered as old systems came to life. Deep inside the walls of the vault still held the original files of Luca's capture. Voice logs, sensor data, internal messages, all waiting to be used or twisted. As they moved deeper, the ground shook for a moment. Not from weapons, but from the core systems failing. The vault was starting to collapse from age and neglect. Mira ordered speed. They reached the main chamber and began extraction of the drives. Suddenly, motion sensors triggered. Defense units hidden in the walls powered up. The air changed as auto turrets locked onto the humans. Cole shouted orders while Mira moved toward the child data file. She grabbed it just before a beam hit the wall beside her. The team returned fire, but only to disable. This was not a war zone. This was a message zone. Every second here mattered. Not only to save lives, but to remind the galaxy of who the humans were. Fighters, yes, but only when forced. Mira moved fast across the room, her armor scorched but her step steady. Cole was down with a burn across his side, not fatal, but serious. She dragged him back as the exit doors began to shut. One final push, and the squad made it out carrying the data, and the wounded outside Relin waited in a cloak near the ship. He watched as the humans emerged. Mira looked at him and gave a nod. No words passed, but the meaning was clear. He had done what he could. Trust would never be full, but respect had been earned. Back aboard Iron Wind, the files were destroyed after analysis. Earth Command confirmed that no remaining evidence could be used against Luca or his family. The boy's name was cleared from alien networks, his face removed from data grids. His story now belonged only to Earth. In a quiet room, Luca played with a small set of blocks, building towers and knocking them down. He no longer asked where he was. He knew he was home. He no longer whispered at night. He slept in peace. His parents watched him with quiet joy, holding each other, knowing the galaxy had moved to protect what they loved. Mira stood outside the recovery wing, looking in through the glass. Cole stood beside her, bandaged and steady. He asked, "What now?" She replied, "We go back to the stars, not to chase enemies, but to make sure none come too close again." Earth had not declared war. but Earth had drawn a line in space above the alien homeworld. Iron Wind hovered for one last moment, then vanished into light. The message was not in the fire. It was in the restraint, not in the destruction, but in the precision. You touched one of ours. We came, we took him back, and we leave a memory you will not forget. Consequences and peace. The stars remained quiet. Long after Iron Wind disappeared from the system, the alien council met again in the central chamber, where once laughter and pride echoed. Now only silence moved through the hall. High Elder Tharn sat with his eyes down, unable to speak. His leadership had led them into a moment that would be written into every species' history files. The kidnapping of one human child had changed the balance of power across sectors. No vote was called. No punishment was given. The council knew what had to be done without words. A decision formed not from pressure but from understanding. All future missions near Earth space were cancelled. All operations involving human life or territory were erased. Every scientist or officer who had ever studied human behavior was pulled back. Contact with Earth was not only suspended, but forbidden across other worlds. Whispers turned into rules. Smugglers rewrote their paths. Traitors erased coordinates. Hunters removed human planets from their plans. Even pirates who once chased profit now avoided Earth space as if it carried a curse. No bounty was worth what humanity could bring. When Pravakid Relan watched these changes from afar, living in silence on a forgotten moon. He did not speak to officials. He did not join the news networks. But he followed one name through secure channels. Luca, the boy he once held in his arms. The child who smiled even after waking up in a strange place. Relan kept that image in his memory, not as a scar but as a lesson. Back on Earth, Luca continued to grow. He went to school in a place protected by invisible walls and secret guards. His parents were no longer afraid. They had seen what their world could do. Every few months, a report was filed about his health, his progress, his safety. Number. Names, no photos. Just data. Enough to keep the system aware and ready. Captain Mira stayed aboard Iron Wind, which now served as a signal more than a ship. Wherever it passed, systems paused. Border guards took notice. Civilizations who once looked down on humanity now gave quiet respect. She did not need to fight. Her presence reminded everyone that Earth had changed the rules. Sergeant Cole recovered fully and took command of the next training unit. He trained new soldiers not with fear but with focus. He taught them that humanity does not chase war, but protects its own with everything it has. He kept the plush toy that Luca once held and placed it in the Hall of Memory, a small museum aboard Iron Wind that only crew could visit. Inside that room were silent reminders of what had happened. A damaged helmet, a recording chip, the coordinates of the alien vault, and a note that read: one child, one mission, one warning. Mira visited that room often, not to mourn, but to remember. She understood that leadership was not just about power. It was about knowing when to act and when to wait. Earth had shown strength, but also control. The galaxy had expected rage, but saw precision. That had made all the difference. On the alien homeworld, a statue was built in secret, not large, not grand. It showed a hand reaching down with a small child standing below, looking up. No names were carved into the stone. No flag was displayed. It was placed in a garden where no soldiers walked and no weapons were carried. Visitors came alone. They sat in silence and left without speaking. The meaning of the statue did not need to be explained. Years passed. Luca grew into a young adult. Strong, curious, and kind. He never forgot the strange faces that once surrounded him in the dark room of the alien ship. But he also remembered the ones who came for him, the ones who carried him out, the ones who protected him, before he even knew what was happening. One day he stood on a hill not far from his home and looked at the sky where stars began to show. His mother stood beside him and asked what he saw. He said, "I see peace, but I also see the reason it stayed." Captain Mira received a final report from Earth Command. The case had been closed. No threat remained. The galaxy had adjusted. There would be no further action. She stood by the window of her ship watching the planets move below. She whispered words only she could hear. We do not seek fear. We do not crave power. But if you ever touch what is ours again, you will remember this day. Iron Wind changed course, slowly moving into the next system, not as a weapon, not as a warning, but as a promise that Earth was watching in. The stars above and the silence below. The story of one child lived on, not in headlines, not in monuments, but in choices. Captain who now charted a path near Earth thought twice. Every leader who sent scouts near human borders paused before signing. Every diplomat who once dismissed human loyalty now included it in every file, because they had seen what Earth was willing to do for just one child. No screams, no firestorms, no war banners, just action precise and unstoppable. And so the galaxy continued with peace held in place by the memory of a mistaken mistake that began with 5 words: you fool. You stole a child and ended with 5 more. Now you know what comes the end.